man convicted in the 2021 death of his infant son is appealing his conviction to the Maine Supreme Judicial Court today. 38-year-old Ronald Harding was found guilty of manslaughter in March 2023. Last September, he was sentenced to 8.5 years behind bars. An autopsy showed 6-week-old Jaden Harding died from injuries consistent with violent shaking while in Ronald Harding's care. In paperwork filed with the High Court, the defense claims the boy was already suffering from a brain bleed the day before the state claims Harding caused his death. And the prosecutor implied during closing arguments the defense hired a forensic expert to lie about the trauma. The state argues there was enough compelling evidence to convict him, and the prosecutor committed no errors during closing argument.